You've probably seen the headline. It's been everywhere this week. Queen Camilla's brutal 8-word response to Meghan. Strong stuff. It conjures a picture, doesn't it? The Queen, wounded and furious, drawing herself up and delivering 8 cutting words. A short, sharp verdict on her daughter-in-law. Precise enough that someone sat down and counted them. 8 words. Brutal ones. The kind of royal put-down that echoes. So let me tell you what those 8 words were. I can't, and neither can anyone else, because they don't exist. I want to be completely straight with you, right from the top, because this is the whole reason I've made this video. I have read the reports, all of them, the express, the syndicated versions, the lot. And nowhere in any of them will you find 8 words spoken by Queen Camilla. You won't find 7, you won't find 1. There is no Camilla quote in this story at all, not a single word attributed directly to her. Now I know how that sounds. You might be thinking, well then there's no story, switch it off. But stay with me, because it's the opposite. There are actually 2 stories here, and both are worth your time. The first is what genuinely happened, and something did happen. There was a real reunion, there was a real photograph, there is a real and rather serious claim about a broken condition and a door that might close on Meghan forever. That story is dramatic enough on its own, and I'm going to lay it out for you properly, exactly as the sources tell it, with the solid parts marked off clearly from the shaky ones. And the second story is how we got from that, from a claim by an unnamed source, all the way to a headline about Camilla's brutal 8 words, because that little journey from what was actually said to what the headline claims was said is one of the most useful things I can show you. Once you've seen how it's done, you'll spot it everywhere for the rest of your life, and you'll never be fooled by it again. So that's our video, the real story told honestly, and the trick behind the headline taken apart so you can see how it works. A quick word before we begin. I don't trade in invented drama. There's an ocean of it out there, and you deserve better than to be shouted at by a headline. What I do is separate what's true from what's merely thrilling and hand you the difference. If that's the sort of steady, honest royal coverage you've been after, do please subscribe and stay with me to the end, because that's where the real 8-word lesson lands. Now, let's set the drama aside for a moment and start with the only sensible place to start, the things we actually know to be true. Let's build on firm ground first, because there is some, and it matters that we're clear about what it is before anyone starts telling us how to feel about it. Here is what is genuinely, solidly established. Not claimed, not whispered by a source. Confirmed, there was a reunion. Last month, Prince Harry and Meghan brought their 2 children, Archie, who's 7, and Lilibet, who's 5, to see King Charles. And this was no small thing, because it was the first time in 4 years that Charles had laid eyes on his grandchildren. 4 years. Think about that as a grandfather or a grandmother. 4 years without seeing 2 small grandchildren who live an ocean away. The meeting took place at Highgrove, the king's country home. Buckingham Palace itself accounted for it. That much is real, and you can hold on to it. And here's a detail from that day that tells you something true about everyone involved. There were no official photographs, none. The palace released nothing. For a first reunion in 4 years, the kind of moment that, in another family, would be splashed across every front page with a beaming official portrait. There was total silence, and that silence was deliberate. It tells you that keeping this private was, for the people running it, the entire point. Now here's the second solid fact, and it's the one everything else hangs on. A little while after that visit, Meghan posted some photographs on social media. A summer collection, she captioned it simply Summer Holiday, a carousel of images from the family's time in England, and among them was a photograph taken at Althorp. If that name doesn't immediately land for you, let me explain why it matters so much. Because it's central to everything that follows. Althorp is the Spencer family estate. It is where Princess Diana grew up, and it is where she is buried, her final resting place on a small island, in a lake on the grounds. So this was not a picture of a garden party. In the images, Harry and young Archie were seen carrying flowers, which led many to conclude, gently and probably rightly, that they were walking to visit Diana's grave. A father taking his son to see the grandmother the boy will never meet. That's it. That's the whole of the solid ground. A private reunion at Highgrove, kept deliberately quiet with no official pictures, and then some days later, a summer holiday post from Meghan that included the family at Diana's resting place. Everything I've just told you, you can rely on. 2 events, both real, both on the record. But notice what isn't in there. There's no condition yet. No fury, no warning, no slam door, no 8 words, none of the drama that made the headline, because all of that, every bit of it, comes from somewhere else entirely. It comes from a single source, speaking anonymously, to one magazine, and that is a very different kind of thing from a confirmed fact. So let's turn to that claim now, and look at it honestly, at exactly what was said, and exactly who said it. So where does all the drama come from? The condition, the fury, the door closing forever. It comes from one place, A single source, unnamed, quoted by a magazine called New Idea, an Australian publication. One source, one outlet. I want you to keep that number in your mind. One, because it's going to matter enormously in a few minutes. Here's what that source claims, and I'll give it to you fairly in full because it deserves a proper hearing before we weigh it. According to this source, the reunion came with a condition attached. Before Harry and Meghan were welcome to see Charles, an understanding was supposedly set. Nothing about the trip was to be shared on social media. Complete privacy. And the reason given for this condition is, I have to say, entirely sympathetic. It was, the source says, primarily to protect the children, to keep Archie and Lilibet, and that rare private family moment out of the public glare. If that's true, it's a perfectly reasonable thing for a grandparent to ask, and the source lays the conditions specifically at Queen Camilla's door. It was Camilla, they say, who was very clear that there should be no posts about the visit. Then came Meghan's summer holiday carousel, and with it, the source claims the condition was broken. And here at last we reach the only actual quote in this entire story. The words that launched 100 headlines. So listen carefully to who is speaking them. The source said, Camilla's words appear to have fallen on deaf ears. She feels that she was clear about no social media posts. And if Meghan thinks Althorpe was an exception, she was very wrong. Now stop, read that back in your mind and notice something crucial. Who just spoke? The source did, not Camilla. Every word of that quote is the anonymous source talking about Camilla. Camilla's words appear to have fallen on deaf ears. That's someone describing Camilla, not Camilla speaking. She feels that she was clear, again, someone reporting on Camilla's supposed feelings from the outside. There is not one word in that entire passage that Camilla herself is quoted as saying. It's all secondhand. A description of a mood offered by a person who won't give their name, and the claim goes one step further to the line that gave the story its teeth. The source suggested that by breaching this condition, Meghan may have done real damage, that the door, as they put it, would remain shut for her forever. That's the threat at the heart of it. Break the privacy rule and lose any chance of future reconciliation for good. Now, I'm not here to tell you this is false. It may well be true. Anonymous sources are sometimes right, and there's nothing outlandish in the idea that a family asked for privacy and was upset when they didn't get it. It's plausible, I grant it fully, but look clearly at what we actually have. Not a statement from the palace, not a word from Camilla, not even several sources agreeing with one another. We have one unnamed person, speaking to one magazine, describing feelings they attribute to the Queen. That's the whole foundation. Everything else, every dramatic headline across the internet this week is built on top of that single voice. And that brings us to the headline itself, because somewhere between that quote and your screen, something remarkable happened. 8 words appeared that nobody ever spoke. Let me show you exactly how. So let's do the arithmetic that a headline writer did, and watch the trick happen in slow motion. Because once you see it, you can't unsee it. And that's exactly what I want for you. We've established the facts. Camilla is not quoted anywhere. The only quote belongs to an anonymous source, and it's a description of Camilla's supposed feelings. So how on earth do we get to a headline that reads, Queen Camilla's brutal 8-word response? Here's how. Take the source's line, Camilla's words appear to have fallen on deaf ears. Now count them. Camilla's words appear to have fallen on deaf ears. Depending on exactly how you slice it, you land at or near 8 words. And there it is. That's your 8-word response. A headline writer took a phrase the source used to describe the situation, counted the words in it, and rebuilt it into something that sounds like a verdict Camilla herself delivered. Do you see what's been done? A sentence about Camilla has been quietly promoted into a sentence by Camilla. The source's paraphrase has been handed to the Queen and presented as her own crushing reply. The words were never hers. They were never spoken by her to Meghan or to anyone. They're a commentator's turn of phrase, dressed up in a crown, and I want to show you the single most important tell, because this is the part you can use forever. Go back and look at the original headline very carefully. The word response, it's in quotation marks, little inverted commas around it. Response, in quotes. Now why would a newspaper put quotation marks around its own word like that? Because those quotation marks are a confession. In the trade, they're sometimes called scare quotes, and they do a very specific job. They let a headline make a dramatic claim, while quietly signaling that the claim isn't quite what it appears. The quotation marks around response are the paper's way of whispering. We don't really mean she responded. Not in the way you're about to assume. It's there so that if anyone ever challenges them, they can point to those little marks and say, we never stated it as fact. Look, we punctuated it. The drama is in the big print. The disclaimer is hidden in the punctuation, and most people, quite understandably, don't read punctuation. They read the words. They see Camilla's brutal 8-word response, they picture the Queen delivering a devastating line, and they carry that picture away with them, a picture of something that simply never happened. The scare quotes did their job. They gave the paper its drama and its deniability in the very same breath. This is not, by the way, some rare or exotic deception. It is one of the most common moves in the whole business, and now that you've seen it named, you'll notice it constantly. A word in quotation marks in a headline, slams, response, snubs, furious, is very often the place where the certainty quietly drains out of the sentence. It's the little flag that says, proceed with care, because what follows may be thinner than it looks. So that's the 8 words accounted for. They weren't a royal put-down, they were a headline built out of a source's paraphrase and a pair of quotation marks. No verdict, no brutal reply, just clever packaging. But here's where I owe you some real fairness. Because it would be easy, having taken the headline apart, to swing too far the other way and dismiss the whole thing as pure invention. And that's not quite right either. Because while the 8 words are a mirage, some of the surrounding story does turn up in more than one place, and a couple of those details are genuinely worth weighing. Let me show you what actually holds up, and what actively works against it. So let's be fair-minded, and put the surrounding claims to the test, the ones that sit around that phantom quote. Because some of them do appear in more than one report, and repetition, while it isn't proof, is at least worth a closer look. Start with what leans toward the story being real. The first supporting detail is about King Charles, and it's the most human thing in the whole affair. Several reports carry a claim that Charles was, in the words of one source, extremely disappointed by the social media post, and the reason given is rather poignant. He was apparently warned by everyone, the source says, including William, that Harry and Meghan simply wouldn't be able to keep the visit quiet, and he went ahead anyway. He opened the door regardless because he wanted to see his grandchildren. So the disappointment, if it's real, isn't just anger, it's the particular ache of a man who was cautioned, who chose to trust anyway, and who now wonders whether the doubters were right. Charles is even said to be questioning whether the post throws his trust in the couple into doubt going forward. That's a claim still. But it's a coherent, believable one, and it appears across several outlets. The second supporting detail concerns Camilla's own position, and it deepens the picture. It has been reported, previously and separately, that Camilla regards letting the Sussexes back into the family fold as a grave mistake. If that's her genuine standing view, then her alleged irritation at the post fits perfectly. It's not a sudden outburst, it's an existing wariness being confirmed, and there's a vivid little detail that several reports include, that Camilla was kept in the dark about the secret visit until the last moment, and had to drive over from her own private home, Ray Millhouse, to Highgrove to be there at all, a woman summoned at short notice to a reunion she had reservations about. You can see how that sets a mood. So that's the case for a disappointed king, a wary queen, a reunion she doubted from the start. It hangs together, it's plausible. But now, and this is why we don't stop at plausible, here's what works against it. Because a careful look turns up not one but 2 real problems. The first is a straightforward contradiction. On one hand, we're told Camilla was almost an afterthought, kept in the dark, driven over at the last minute. On the other hand, a royal author told People magazine that Camilla was a non-negotiable for Charles, that he specifically wanted her there, that her presence was a fixed condition of the meeting. Well, which is it? Was she a last-minute addition barely kept in the loop, or an essential presence the king insisted upon? Those 2 claims can't both be fully true, and the fact that they're both circulating tells you how loose the sourcing on all of this really is. When the accounts can't agree on something as basic as whether the queen was central or peripheral, you're right to hold the rest of it lightly. And the second problem is bigger and genuinely fascinating, because it flips the whole story on its head. We've been assuming along with every headline that these leaks are coming from the palace, that it's Camilla's camp or Charles's briefing the press about their displeasure. But at least one report cast serious doubt on that, pointing out something obvious once it's said. The palace has been extraordinarily tight-lipped about this entire visit. Why would they suddenly start briefing reporters about private reactions now? And then comes the twist. The respected royal correspondent Rebecca English has suggested that the small leaks and hints reaching the papers about this trip may have come from the Sussexes' own PR team.
Sit with that for a second because it turns the story inside out. If that's right, then the very idea of a palace source fuming about Meghan may be pointing in exactly the wrong direction. The drama might not be the palace attacking Meghan at all. It might be spin from the other side entirely, or simply the fog of a story that too many people are guessing at. So where does that leave us? With a claim that's plausible, partly corroborated, and also internally contradictory and disputed at the root. Not invented, but nowhere near solid. Firmly in the pile, marked handle with care. And there's one more thing that unsettles the whole broken condition story. And it's sitting right there, in the photograph itself. Look, again at the photograph at the center of all this. Because the more closely you look at it, the shakier the word breach starts to feel. Here is the assumption everyone has quietly made. that Meghan's post broke a rule about keeping the reunion private. But go back to what was actually in that post. It was captioned, "Summer Holiday." It was a collection of images from the family's time in England. And the photograph everyone fixed on, the one that caused the storm, was not from Highgrove at all. It wasn't the king. It wasn't the grandchildren's meeting with their grandfather. It was Althorp, Harry and Archie, carrying flowers at the estate where Diana is buried. So ask yourself the simple question that the headline skipped right past. Did that photograph actually reveal anything about the reunion? Because on the face of it, no. It didn't show Charles. It didn't show the meeting. It didn't show Highgrove or a single detail of that private family gathering. It showed a father and his son visiting the grave of the boy's grandmother. That is a separate event, in a separate place, on a separate day. The reunion and the graveside visit are two different things, and only one of them was ever supposedly under a privacy condition. Do you see the problem? The alleged rule was about the reunion. The photograph was about Diana, and, unless the condition was so sweeping that it forbade Harry from being seen anywhere in England, which would be an extraordinary thing to demand of a grown man visiting his own mother's grave, then it's genuinely arguable that Meghan didn't breach the reunion condition at all. She posted a holiday picture, a tender one, at that. And this is where the whole story splits into two completely different readings, depending entirely on where you stand. If you're inclined to be hard on Meghan, you read it this way. She was told to keep the whole trip quiet. She knew perfectly well how sensitive it was, and posting any images from that visit, Diana's grave included, was a wink to the world that said, "We were here," trampling the spirit of the agreement, even if not its exact letter. From that angle, it looks like a calculated toe over the line. But if you're inclined to be fair to her, you read it entirely differently. A man took his son to visit his late mother's resting place. His wife shared a gentle family photograph of a summer trip. The image had nothing whatsoever to do with the private reunion, and turning that into a brutal royal breach is a mountain built from a molehill by people determined to find fault. And here's the honest truth. I can't tell you for certain which of those readings is correct, and neither can anyone making videos about it, because it turns entirely on a private understanding none of us were ever party to. What exactly was agreed? How broadly was it meant? Was Althorp discussed at all? Nobody outside that family actually knows. Everyone claiming certainty in either direction is guessing and dressing the guess up as knowledge. But you can at least see now why this is so much muddier than the headline pretended. Camilla's brutal 8-word response to Meghan breaking condition presents the whole thing as settled fact. There was a condition. Meghan broke it, Camilla struck back. 3 clean certainties. And when you actually examine it, all 3 dissolve. The condition is a single anonymous claim. The breach hangs on a photograph that arguably breached nothing. And the 8-word response was never spoken at all. 3 pieces of certainty in a headline. Not one of them survives a proper look. So when you strip all of that away, the phantom quote, the contested leaks, the ambiguous photograph, you might think there's nothing left worth talking about. But there is. There's something real underneath all this noise. Something quieter and honestly a good deal sadder than any invented royal spat. And it's what I want to leave you with. Take away the 8 words that were never spoken. Take away the leaks that might have come from either side. Take away the photograph that arguably broke nothing at all. Clear all the manufactured drama off the table. And you're left holding something small and real and rather tender. A grandfather saw his grandchildren for the first time in 4 years. Think only about that for a moment, with everything else stripped away. 4 years is a very long time in the life of a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old. It's most of their lives. Whatever you make of any of the adults in this story, a man who missed 4 years of his grandchildren got a single afternoon back. And by every account, he wanted it badly enough to override the people warning him it was a risk. That's not politics. That's a grandfather. And on the other side of it, a son took his own boy to visit the grave of the mother that boy will never meet. Harry, walking through Althorp with Archie, flowers in hand, to the place where Diana lies. There is nothing calculated in that image, whatever the headlines did with it afterwards. It's just grief carried down a generation. A father showing his child where his own mother rests. That's the real story here. Not a brutal royal takedown. A fragile, tentative, painfully careful attempt by a broken family to find their way back toward one another. And how easily, how instantly, even the smallest move gets swept up and turned into a weapon. Because here is the true thing underneath all of it, the thing that didn't need inventing. Trust, once it's gone, is agonizingly slow to rebuild. This family has 6 years of hurt between them. Real hurt, on every side. And when trust is that damaged, every single action gets read through the lens of old wounds. A holiday photograph stops being a holiday photograph. It becomes evidence. A grave visit becomes a breach. A gentle post becomes a provocation. Not necessarily because anyone intended harm, but because a family that has stopped trusting one another reads betrayal into everything, whether it's there or not. And that, if there's a lesson in this at all, is the genuinely sad part. Whether or not Camilla set a condition, whether or not Meghan crossed it. The deeper truth is that they've reached a place where it barely matters. Because the suspicion is now so total that almost anything either side does can be spun into a fresh wound. That's what 6 years of estrangement does. It poisons the ordinary. It makes a summer holiday snap into an international incident. So the next time one of these headlines slides across your screen, the brutal quotes, the counted words, the settled certainties, I hope you'll do what we did today. Pause. Ask who actually spoke. Ask how many sources there really are. Look for the little quotation marks doing the quiet work. And separate what genuinely happened from what was merely thrilling to say. Because when you do that, the fake drama falls away. And what's left is almost always more human and more worth understanding than the headline ever was. Camilla's brutal 8 words were never spoken. But a grandfather saw his grandchildren, and a son visited his mother's grave, and a wounded family tried and wobbled and is still somehow trying. That's the real story, and nobody had to invent a single word of it.